Thank you, Chairman. I will next recognize our ranking member of the subcommittee for 5 minutes of questioning.
5 questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. English, thank you so much for joining us. Can you briefly remind us of what the world of boxing looked like before the Ali Act, and what were the conditions and practices that led to the Ali Act?
Repeating, in my view, it was thoroughly corrupt. Ratings were sold. We know that as a fact because there was a conviction as a result of it. There was a coziness, I think I say in my written testimony, between promoters and managers. Now, a manager should have a fiduciary duty to a fighter. Manager meaning anyone who gets a percentage of the fighter's purse, who is not a promoter. That was not the case. We had, and still do, have issues where you have relatives who manage fighters where a promoter has an interest. If you're asking also about the Health and Safety Act, it was a start. It wasn't the completion. There's a lot more that needed to be done, but the biggest thing that happened was the suspension list administered through the ABC into a company called BoxRec. Right now it's BoxRec. It was something else then.
Let me ask you this. If the Revival Act was passed, would Unified Boxing Organization, or UBOs, be allowed to undertake any of the practices that the Ali Act prohibited?
Yes. One major one is the coziness, I use that word, between managers and the UBO. Whether it's the UFC, Zuffa, or anybody else who may come along. Nobody else exists right now. But I have seen provisions of contracts that require the signing with a, quote, advisor, unquote, for 15% of a boxer's income. It was in a promotional contract. So, and that was an entity that was a Zuffa-related entity. Now that's absolutely prohibited. Now I don't know whether that contract was provisioned on the completion of this bill, but it's there.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know why, but it's there.
Thank you. Mr. Epstein, the UFC settled a long-standing antitrust case after allegations of using restrictive contracts, keeping fighters' pay at roughly 15 to 20% of revenue, as Mr. English was kind of alluding to. What minimum share of event revenues can you commit today that boxers could receive under Zuffa Boxing League?
Yeah, first let me just address, sort of the lawsuit, which is part of your question. We did settle the lawsuit. It was 10 years of litigation. We made a business decision to settle it. But I want to be clear, there was no finding of any liability or anything along those lines. As far as committing to any percentage today, obviously can't do that. We're starting a new business. If this legislation is passed, we're going to be starting a new business, and it's going to be a startup
well, then
business.
let me ask you this. UFC is being sued again, not only with more claims of wage suppression, but also new allegations of discovery violation, even though you just said there was no discovery, possibly withholding a substantial amount of evidence that was crucial to the UFC's bid for force their antitrust claims into arbitration. With all these lawsuits, I'm having a hard time seeing why any of the fighters would ever be able to trust that they will be paid fairly in the system. So, Mr. Epstein, what would you tell the many boxers who are worried about being trapped in a long coercive contract, or how will you make sure that the economic freedom of boxers will not be taken away under this model that you're advocating for?
What I would tell them is they're going to have a choice. What's very clear from this legislation is that the existing Ali Act is not going to change at all. We're adding new provisions that will add for, we've talked about, the Unified Boxing Organizations, or UBOs. There's going to be a choice for athletes to make. I don't see how choice is a bad thing. If our system is not providing the economic opportunities for athletes, they can avail themselves to the existing system. But the problem we've got is the current state of boxing is just a disaster. As was mentioned in previous testimony from witnesses on this panel, there are no major media companies in the United States of America that currently broadcast in any way, shape, or form a consistent cadence of boxing events. If we look back 10 or 15 years ago, you had HBO, you had Showtime, you had ESPN Friday Night Fights, which I loved, Tuesday Night Fights on USA. I mean, I'm a huge boxing fan too. I want this sport to be successful. I want it to win. And I really do believe that the UBOs will give it a chance. But ultimately, it's going to be a choice for athletes. If they don't like it, they can choose to stick with the existing system.